this lesson we will talk a bit about architectural modeling and how can we utilize some great tools in Synology to help us in that process. Okay, I showed you various techniques for cutting holes and creating spherical shapes and cylindrical shapes from really box shapes, and what I really want to talk about now is what happens frequently while you are modeling something architectural. You need to model something that repeats itself many times. So for example, like a staircase, or if you're doing something really detailed, then let's say roof tiles or some sort of fences and stuff. And what you really don't want to do is to do that manually. That is not good idea. Okay, you don't want to do manual work, only if absolutely necessary. So let's say this is a house. Well, it's just a simple representation of what a house should look like. And let's say that we need some sort of a fence here. And let me go to my side view. Let me, with my Bezier spline, let me create some, I will hide my axis, some really well arbitrary shape for a fence, maybe something like this. Okay, I want to select all the points and do a soft interpolation. Okay, let me reveal my axis, and as you can see, it's right here in the world center, and we want it really to be in the center of this object. So we will go structure, axis center, and simply to hit and execute command. Go back here. So let's say this is a piece of our fence. Okay, we'll scale it down a bit, something more decent in size, something like this. Okay, firstly we should build a geometry from that spline, and we can utilize this extrude NURBS guy. I'm holding my Alt key down, so it will become a parent of that spline. And you see the default setting goes in Z, and we really need this X value. Okay, something like 2, maybe 3. I'm not really going for superb shape here, it's just to show you the techniques. Okay, so let me convert that, and I will name it. Always name your object, that's always a good idea. So this would be a fence piece. Okay, and what I want to do now is to utilize again that beautiful, absolutely fantastic cloner tool inside this MoGraph model, which is really awesome. So let me, again, I'm holding my Alt key, and I will simply select my cloner object. Okay, you can see now in the default mode this cloner creates linear cloning, and default setting is free. I believe you can play with that. Okay, if I zoom out you will see the result. So what we actually want to do, we want to clone this fence piece along something, along some object. And the best idea for this kind of things is to use splines. And to even help yourself more, just to do as little manual work as you can, go to the edge mode. You see I already have this edge selected. You can select it easily by selecting your key. That will bring up this path selection guy, and in this simple edge loop you can select that loop, this edge loop of edges. The difference between classical loop with UL is that loop will behave differently. You see, selected this loop of polygons. So one of those will give you the results that you are looking for. Okay, so UL this loop, standard loop, or UM, which is a rather simplified version of the loop. Okay, so I want to create a object for itself from this, so I will create a spline from this edge by going here under structure, edit spline, and edge to spline, and immediately I will have a spline as a child of my object, so I can pull it out and just pull it so you can see it. Okay, I can also give it some color just to be able to see it more clearly. So I will use color always and set some really visible color, something like, say, this green one is really visible. Okay, so again we want to clone this fence piece on our spline. Okay, so under this cloner object we will tell that we want to clone to an object. Okay, so set the mode to object, and you'll get an object slot, and you will simply drag your object into that slot and you will see the result. Okay, so this looks nice as for cloning, but the clones are oriented the wrong way. So to solve issues like this, you have this transform tab, the cloner object, and you can simply set various attributes of your clones. So for example, I want to rotate them here minus 90 degrees. Okay, and I'm already having something well acceptable. Okay, what I also want to do, there is a mode how these pieces will be distributed here. Okay, so I will just make sure I will set it to even, so have even spaces between them. Okay, and really set something higher than this 10 count, something like maybe 25. Okay, what I really also want to do is to position this right somewhere to the ground, to this plane. So simply control the position of these clones with my spline. Well, basically always use the object you cloned these clones to control it. Okay, so now you can move it, rotate it, and really do whatever you want with that. Don't look at the artistic side. Again, I just want you to really get the idea for techniques. Okay, so utilize this cloner object. It's absolutely fantastic tool. Imagine doing this manually. That's a pain. You can also utilize this cloner object, for example, for roof tilings, for staircases, and for so many things. So you can, example, clone trees and plants and everything that you can think of. Okay, so let me just show you in the next example. I will create a spiral staircase. Okay, again with this use of the cloner object, which is really powerful. Okay, so let's go to our next example. Okay, so let's build a staircase. Let's build a spiral staircase. This could be a bit intimidating and look really complicated for a beginner, but actually it is not. First thing you want to do, you want to create some representation of how your spiral steps will look like. So I'll create this helix spline, this guy here, and as you can see, we want our staircase to point in this direction. Okay, so you have to change this plane to X and Z. And you can see we discussed parametric objects, so you can basically fiddle around with some settings, and for example you can scale this spline and it will always scale uniformly unless you play with these settings here. For example, we could increase the height, something like, I know, some 419 meters, and let's say that will be our staircase, our spiral staircase. Again, I'm not trying to build perfect stairs. I just want to show you the workflows and the techniques that can help you a lot while you're modeling. So let's say this is good enough. We will simply convert it with our C shortcut and we have a regular spline. Okay. Now we actually need a stair. So a stair is basically a cube or any shape you will want, and I can leave this also as a parametric object because I can then play around with settings later once I clone this. So you see these orange dots, you can actually manipulate those two and really scale those parametric objects on one axis. Okay, so stair looks something like along these lines, yes. And let me scale it down overall. What I want to do is to clone this stair on this spline. So once again, while my object that I want to clone is selected, I'll hold my Alt key and click on this cloner object. And as you can see, we once again have free clones. This is the default settings, but we don't want this mode to be linear. We want this mode of cloning to be on object. Okay, so object, and our object in this case is this spline. So once again, simply drag that spline in the object slot. Okay, and you see instantly we have some sort of a thingy going on here. Okay, so like in the last example, we will really fiddle around with these settings to see what will happen if we, for example, let's say set this to 90 degrees and this to, we are looking for some good numbers, also 90, and so you see whatever settings I do, so this could be half, it could be 45, see whatever settings I do, I have a problem. So I can maybe turn this align clone, but this will also be a problem. We have to tell these clones where to point. Okay, and this is where many people give up on MoGraph. MoGraph is unbelievably powerful and you can use it in so many ways that are beyond anything you ever imagined. But let's get back to the topic. Mostly people give up because they can't get the results quickly. Okay, they can't seem to really work with MoGraph. You have to understand how this operates. So basically we want to tell these clones to point at something, to look at something, because I want these boards to be really flat, like on a real staircase. And what I want to do now, I want to create a copy of this spline that I will use as a rail. Okay, and my clones will be looking at that rail. So let me hold down my control key and I will drag it down, and now I will have a copy of my spline. Let me just rename this, and I just click the arrow down and rename this so I have an A and a B spline. I want to scale this spline because I want to this B spline to be bigger than this spline, but not to be taller. So I want to scale only on these two axes. You see, only those two are highlighted. If I go into the center, I will highlight all three of them. Okay, so I now will scale only in X and Z direction. Okay, you can see the effect. It scaled only in those two directions. It retained the height. So now I really want my clones to look at this spline. So this will be a rail spline. So under cloner object, we'll simply drag this B spline into the rail slot, and just to be sure that you are starting from a nice clean values, just zero this out always. Okay, so here again under cloner object settings, I want to really check some settings. What will happen if I enable this target option? They will move slightly. And in this scenario, you really have to understand the axis system, okay? Because for clones will always point to their rails with their y-axis, okay? To really illustrate that, I have to convert this cube to a polygon object. So you see this green guy, and if you look more closely on the clones, they all point to this rail spline with this y-axis. Let me enable my good art shading lines. I really like to work in that mode. And also under cloner object, I will increase this clone number to something like, let's say, 20 maybe. Okay, so even if you convert this parametric cube to a polygon object now, you will preserve everything. You will not destroy your workflow. Now I will show you why I was so eagerly wanting you to understand this axis system. So let's put this green guy, this y-axis somewhere else. So we will, in our axis mode, select it and simply let's rotate it and watch what happens. I'm just using my shift key to constrain it to 5-degree increments. Okay, and let's try rotate on this axis also, something like 80 degrees maybe. Okay, and we have really nice nicely oriented boards, but the problem is see now 4D calculates them from the center. What we really want to do is push these boards all the way in between these two splines. Okay, so once again, see now 4D always calculates object from this axis system. So what if I move this axis a bit to the end, and you will see the boards move accordingly. Okay, so you can sort of eyeball it, or you can even scale those boards later, and the cloner object will do the rest. Okay, so when you manipulate this cube and add details, all the clones will follow. Okay, so let's for example add some more to fill these gaps around maybe 30 maybe. There are various settings here under cloner object. Let me just pull this a bit up so you can see. I can even set to be even, and it would mean even space between those clones. I can set a smooth rotation, so it will give you somewhat different results. Okay, you can see there is a subtle difference. It may mean a world to you sometimes, or even increase this clone count to, let's say, even 50. So play around. And what's the best thing? Your cloner object will not slow down your scene. It will stay quick and responsive because all these clones are really instances. So you can build staircases with this, you can build railroads, or just put your imagination into mind. What is really good, if you select these splines, you can later scale them or move them or rotate them so you have a non-destructive workflow. So for example, you can build bridges with these techniques, and so okay, it really has zillion purposes. This cloner object is a jewel, and mostly MoGraph model is something really unique in the 3D world. Okay, you can do unbelievable things with it, but this is beyond the grasp of this tutorial set. Okay, I believe this wraps it up for let's say architectural modeling helpers, and see you in the next lesson.